is a channel they can swim through to get into their in-ground pool. And they do dearly love to hang out there, and they know I'm going to feed them there when I'm finished. So I'm guessing probably that's where the majority of them are. And you can see them there. If you walk around the walkway, when you get past the deer, you'll see an observation area which looks into their in-ground pool. Oh, here we come. Now they can swim pretty much anywhere they want in this part of the river. Around the corner is a big bridge that has bars on it, and that keeps our manatees in this part of the river, and the wild manatees on the other side. So they can swim all up this river as far as the observatory, which you see here, which is resting in the spring. And the springs you see over here is the headwaters for the Manatee River. And that puts out about 2 million gallons of fresh water every hour. And fortunately for our manatees, that water stays a constant year-round temperature of 72 to 74 degrees Fahrenheit. And that keeps them pretty comfortable because manatees cannot tolerate cold. If they're in water much less than 68 degrees Fahrenheit for any amount of time, they suffer very badly from cold stress and they will die from it. And this past winter, we actually lost hundreds of wild manatees to the cold because they could not, it was so cold for so long they could not get to the warm water springs or the power plant outlets. So, obviously the manatee are not fish. They are mammals. Like us, they need to breathe air. And they normally do so about every 4 or 5 minutes. But they can stay underwater about 20 minutes or so if they're eating or sleeping or just hanging around on the bottom, which they sometimes do. They have some hairs on their body. Every hair they have is a sensing organ. They use it like cats use their whiskers to sense what's touching them in the water. They're warm-blooded, and they give live birth to their young. Now, manatees can start mating whenever they reach maturity, and that's normally around the age of 4 or 5. Their gestation period is about 13 months. They don't have a particular season to mate, so that manatee babies are born all different times of the year. Now, when they're born, they weigh about 60 pounds, and they're about 3 feet long. Now, you can see that changes considerably by the time they grow up. 10 to 13 feet is pretty normal, and 1 to 3,000 pounds is considered normal. Maybe 1 or 2 of ours are a touch over that scale. If they look larger to you than ones in the wild, you'd be correct. Several of them are pretty darn big. Now, the babies have to spend a real long time with their mothers. Usually that ends up being about 2 or 2.5 years. And during that time, they nurse the entire time. And also, the mother's teaching them where to find food and where to find warm water, which is really critical for them to survive. So consequently, a manatee doesn't have an opportunity to have a whole lot of babies during her lifetime. And that's one of the things that leads them to remain an endangered species. Now, their life expectancy is said to be, or supposed to be, about 60. However, they very rarely make it that long in the wild. And they haven't been in captivity long enough for us to determine how long they will live in captivity. So I don't know if you can see their eyes. Their eyes are kind of small compared to the size of the bodies, but they have fairly good vision. And they can pick up visual cues as much as 150 yards away, which is certainly not bad. They have some cones in their eyes, so they can probably determine some colors. Now, I know you can't see any ears on them because they don't have any, but they have about 6 inches behind each eye ear canals, and their hearing is considered to be excellent, especially underwater. Now, they do have a couple of hearing problems, I guess you would call them. They are not always real sure what direction a sound is coming from. And also, high-frequency noises are a problem for manatees. And unfortunately, that is the sound that boat motors make, so you can see where that could be a problem for them. Now, I don't know Does anybody come up for a breath of air? Probably not. Won't do it when I want you to. They have little flaps over their nostrils, which they open up when they come up to breathe. And they close them up before they go underwater because they really don't like to get noses. They're kind of careful about that. Now you can probably see them stretching out their upper lip to pull food into their mouths. That lip is prehensile, and it's actually an adaptation of the elephant's trunk. And the elephant is their closest relative. They're not real closely related to other sea mammals, but the DNA of elephants and manatees is extremely close. You can see their hide looks like elephant hide. Those flippers that they have in front, they don't swim with them like Flipper does. They will use those like rudders in the water. They will stand on them. They will use them like arms to pull things in towards themselves. And if you could see them up close, they have toenails on them. And the toenails look exactly like elephants' toenails. Also, their babies nurse from just behind those flippers. And elephant babies nurse from directly behind their mother's front legs. So they have a lot of similarities. Now they have no front teeth, but they don't need sharp biting teeth. They're strictly herbivores. They never ever eat meat or fish of any kind. But they do have molars at the back of their mouths, and that grinds up the food that they eat. Now those molars have a pretty big job because manatees eat about 10% of their body weight a day, and they need to because what they eat has very little nutritive value. They basically eat weeds, whatever they find growing on the bottom of rivers, canals, the ocean, wherever they happen to be, and they really don't care if they're in salt water or fresh water. If it's warm enough and there's food there, a manatee is perfectly content to stay there. Now, those molars wear down because they have such a job to do, and they're replaced when they do. They're called marching molars. So if you don't know when a manatee was born, there's no way of checking their age when they become adult by checking their teeth, because manatees always have about 32 teeth in their mouth. Now, the food takes about a week to make its way through their digestive system, so you can see that's pretty slow. Their metabolism is slow, and you can see that their speed through the water is pretty slow.